Hello, litigators and opinionators. Court is now in session. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about more in detail about motive here, what could possibly have happened. And as I was looking around in these YouTube streets, I saw this wonderful reenactment kind of layout of the rooms that was done by Milo and Lily Van Adventures YouTube channel. And I thought this YouTuber did an amazing job, and I wanted us to go over that layout because I thought her when her layout was phenomenal, guys. I think it's really logical in my opinion of how these killings could have possibly happened, and it flows with my theory of what I think happens. So I wanted to share it with you guys also to see what you guys thought. But before I actually show you that, I wanted to go over some of the possible connections. Review this stuff because we've talked about it on another video, but I want to review it so it can be included in this video. So what my theory is I think that Brian developed some type of obsession with Kaylee. That's what I think. That is still my theory. Now, I still acknowledge that the two young ladies, Maddie and Zaina, had worked at a Mad Greek restaurant that serves vegan options, but knowing that Brian frequents a lot of bars based upon some of the indications from various people. For example, when the reporters went to Washington near the university, they found that Brian went to a bar a lot called The Land, and he went to breweries over there. In Pennsylvania, there is an owner of a bar that said he frequented his bar a lot. So hearing from these various people refer to Brian being at a lot of bars, I think the logical location where Brian would have met these young ladies would have been at a bar. And we know that the young ladies go to bars because the very last night that they had gone somewhere, they had went to a bar before they were brutally, savagely slaughtered. So with that information coming into play, Court TV had found this link that where Kaylee may have possibly met and encountered these individuals. Or in particular, may have encountered Ryan Kohlberger, guys. Okay. So one thing I noticed was on her Instagram that she has gone to Pullman, Washington State University to attend their spring fest. This picture was taken back April 21st of 2018. However, it shows her connection to Washington State University in that she frequents that area a lot. Her mother also posted a picture of her at a particular bar that Court TV talked about. And I'm just going to refresh your recollection about this Court TV interview. Basically, Court TV had discovered, because they had went to the Washington University, and one of the reporters had stopped by to go to lunch at a bar called the Coog. And the Coog is a bar. They have certain like comfort foods there. A lot of college students go to this bar, and Kaylee goes there. A lot of college students go there to celebrate their 21st birthday. And surprisingly, Kaylee went here to celebrate her 21st birthday. And it was discovered that she went there because she wrote her name on a wall where a lot of the students will write their name to evidence they had gone there, and she wrote her name and she said 21 and she put her sorority name on there. So that was evidence that she had visited and has been coming around Pullman, Washington, which could have, in my opinion, been where Brian encountered these young ladies at this bar, because there's prior individuals coming out saying that Brian goes to different bars. So it's not far-fetched that he would have gone to this bar and where he would have met her. So let's just revisit the information from Court TV before we move on to the layout of the house and kind of figure out what theory could have possibly happened that led to this tragic ending of the Idaho 4.
To the neighborhood, whether it was the houses and the parties or an individual. But let's get back to another individual. We've been talking a lot about Kaylee Goncalves. And I understand she has some sort of a connection that you found to Washington State University, which is the school where the accused killer went, which is, again, 10 to 15 minutes away from the University of Idaho campus.
Yeah, we did. In fact, when I was there yesterday digging up some information, we stopped to grab a bite to eat at a place called The Coug. It's a very prime location, WSU campus, and it was packed full of students, bar and grill. It's actually a tradition, according to the website, since 1932. And what I could tell, there were at least 2 young women with banners celebrating their 21st birthday. So it's a place you go to celebrate your 21st birthday. And we found Kaylee's name on the wall. So you go into this the Coug and you sign the wall and you leave your mark on the establishment. And Kaylee's name is on the wall there. She put Kaylee's 21 and she puts her sorority on there at this rival school. Again, it's WSU, not where she attended. And it's also well known that Kaylee's mother has put out a photo of Kaylee there at the bar, saying that's one of her most favorite photos of her daughter, Kaylee, her smile that she's at this bar at a rival school across state lines, and putting her name on the wall at the Coug. So she had a connection there at the campus, and it goes to show how close these 2 schools are. It doesn't take long to drive from one campus to another, and maybe somehow, again, her birthday, June 8th, where she turned 21. Was she there on June the 8th at WSU campus celebrating her birthday there at the Coug?
Wow. And do we know, and my recollection of the timeline of when the accused killer rolls into town from Pennsylvania, is it in June? Is it after June? Do we even know?
We don't know, obviously confirmed, but the affidavit, we do know it states that they obtained his historical cellular data for his phone dating back to June, which makes me believe that that was the time he was here in the Washington, Idaho area, where they would want to track his history from that date. So again, in June, he was possibly in Washington, moving into his apartment, getting ready for graduate school, and maybe somehow ran into one of the victims, possibly Kaylee. We know now that she spent time there.
She spent time there, and when it's your 21st birthday, it's a big deal. You let everyone in the place know you're signing up, so anyone else is there, they're going to notice you. Okay. Chanley Painter.
So I wanted to replay that just so I can refresh your recollection of that. But that to me is where I really think the connection is more likely to have occurred, and where he developed this obsession with her. And, you know, it's so easy because it's such a small town, such an intimate environment. It would have been very easy for him to track her down and start stalking her. I think just similar to BTK, he had made up in his mind that she was going to be his victim. Now, like I said, this wonderful YouTuber, her name is, I got to get her name right first before I so it's Milo and Lily Adventures. She did this wonderful reenactment. Here is the layout of their rooms, and I thought she did a phenomenal job. And I really agree with her theory about the order of events. I think that Kaylee was his target. As I mentioned, I do truly think that she was. So I think when he first came to this particular, her house, when he was kind of driving around, he was waiting for the perfect opportunity. And I personally think he went up the stairs first. Probably went to her room first because that was his intention. And he waited because he thought everybody in the house would be asleep. So he thought he could just easily slip in there, go directly upstairs, go to her room, unalive her, and leave. But that's not how it worked out. When he got in there, everything was not as planned. Kaylee ended up sleeping in the room with Maddie. So when he gets in there, he is, shocked by the fact that there's 2 girls in there, Maddie and Kaylee. So he kills both of them to avoid having a witness. And then I think, and this is just a theory, guys, all this is a theory. I think when he came down those stairs, because it was evident that Zana was up. Now that we have the affidavit, we know that Zana was awake. So I'm thinking she might have began to walk out of her room, casually, maybe to go get her food or whatever, because there's allegations that she ordered some food. Now, there is another YouTuber saying that he has a theory that maybe Brian ordered the food. I don't agree with that theory, so I'm not going to go with that. And I just would respectfully ask people to not tell me what other YouTubers are saying. This is my channel. I have my own theories on here. Other YouTubers have their own theories. Just respect our differences and our different perspectives, because I will not post your comment if you're talking about another YouTuber. Sorry to get off topic. But anyways, Zana may have ordered her food, and maybe she was going out to get her food. And as she's leaving her room, I think she might have encountered him. And so at that point, he had no choice in his mind, in his sick mind, to unalive her. And of course, Ethan's in the room with Zana, so he would have been awakened if he was asleep. And so Brian would have had to unalive him too. Now, as he's trying to rush out, he realizes he's running out of time because Zana was crying. So he's pretty sure he's going to wake up some of the other people. So he's probably in a rush to get out, because either he thought one of the other roommates may have called 911, so he had to run and hurry up and leave. And the reason why I'm suspecting that he might have assumed that they may have called 911 is because he sped out of that driveway like he was on the run for something, and he assumed that the authorities were on their way, because there was otherwise no need for him to speed out of that driveway the way he did. He sped off and they left skid marks. So in my opinion, I'm thinking he might have, when Zana was crying, I think he might have been afraid that maybe the other roommates heard something, could have called 911, because he hurried up and rushed out of there. And obviously, in my opinion, didn't even notice that Dylan was even there. So let's watch her reenactment. I thought she did a great job of her reenactment. And then also, I wanted to hear a perspective after we watch her wonderful reenactment. I wanted to hear the perspective of another victim who had experienced the slayings of her roommates. And she was also in a sorority, because I feel like she really will shed light to a lot of individuals about what could have been in the mindset of Dylan, because still, again, a lot of people are judging Dylan and they are claiming that Dylan, should have called 911 within 8 hours. But I really feel that there is a legitimate reason why she didn't. And I talked about this before. The only reason why I brought it out in another video is because I know the defense will utilize the 8-hour gap to try to argue another theory, claim that maybe Dylan was involved, or the roommates may have planned this, or they were the ones involved. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. But in my personal humble opinion, I think Dylan had a logical explanation, which we'll get into after we watch this wonderful video from the YouTuber I referenced. And again, I want to give her credit and just to go subscribe to her channel.
In the beginning, most of us believed the two surviving roommates, Bethany and Dylan, were sleeping on the first floor. Since then, we've learned Dylan was sleeping here on the second floor, along with Xana and Ethan, located here. Kaylee and Madison were located here on the third floor. The dog was located on the third floor, and the room by itself. Let's move around and see through the walls, into the kitchen, to the back slider, and take a look at the time frames. At 4:04 a.m., the suspect can be seen trying to park his car. At 4:09, approximately 5 minutes later, he enters the house through the back slider. At 4:18, he leaves the house after committing the crimes. At 4:20, he's caught on camera driving away at a high rate of speed. All of this only took 9 minutes. Let's watch what that looks like. The suspect enters through the back sliding door. He pauses at the stairs to look around to make sure no one's up. He then turns and goes upstairs. The first bedroom he stops at and opens the door, he sees no one there. He continues to the next bedroom. Here we know what happens. Downstairs, Dylan is sleeping. The noise from upstairs wakes her up. She thinks it's Kaylee playing with her dog. She gets up and goes to the door and looks out. She sees nothing there. The suspect then continues down the stairs about 3 minutes later. He then heads to Xana's room. Outside, there's a security camera picking up some whimpering, cries, and a thud at 4:17. We've learned that Xana was found on the floor, which might explain the thud. Dylan again hears something and looks outside her door. She sees the suspect. He walks right past her and leaves.
I thought that was an amazing job that she did on that. And to me, I think that's really what happened. I just think the only difference is, in my opinion, is I think that in particular, I think that maybe Xana walked out because she was still awake, guys. She may have walked out of her room to go grab her food, because there was an Uber Eats. And we also have seen new footage of that food. And let me see if I can find the video of food. It was like a Jack in a Box bag that was left uneaten. So I'm thinking maybe when she first came into the house, she got her Uber Eats, she put it down, she went in her room to do something, probably went to go, finish her TikTok or whatever, finishing a TikTok. Then when she was going to go retrieve her food, and this is just a theory, guys, I have no idea what really happened. She went to go retrieve her food. That's when I'm starting to think that maybe that was when she encountered Brian. And at that point, he felt as though he had no choice in his sick, decrepit mind, guys, because he could have just not been there in the first place. But he had no choice but to unalive her and Ethan, who was in the room with her. That's what I'm thinking, because it appears as though he rushed out and just left after that. He hurried up and left after that, and didn't even notice Dylan. Or did he notice her and just intentionally left her alive? Who knows? He probably felt that he had been in there too long. And by then he probably thought, well, maybe they had already called the authorities, because there had been a lot of noise going on in the house, that he might have just assumed that someone already called 911. That's what I'm thinking. What do you guys think about that? So, hold on, let me see if I can find it. There is a video going around about the Jack in a Box, and I'm pretty sure the authorities will have evidence in her phone as to whether she purchased that food or not. Because I know there's some people saying that they don't think that she purchased it, that they think that somebody else may have purchased it. Who knows, guys? I don't think Brian would risk purchasing it.
And the state attorney is.
And I know that Crime Circus said something like that. I just personally don't agree with it, because the authorities wouldn't say that she ordered Uber Eats unless they probably already checked her phone, because they knew that she was on TikTok. How would they know she's on TikTok? Because they checked her phone. So they would have also been able to verify if it was her that ordered the Uber Eats. So the fact that they are saying she ordered the Uber Eats, in my opinion, confirms it. To me, I just think what ended up happening is that she probably hurried up when she got her food. She put it on the counter, probably went to go do something real quick, and then went out to go grab her food. And as she was doing that,
I love HoneyBook.
Sorry, guys, about the random sounds. As she was doing that, I think that she might have encountered Brian. And that's when Brian, as he was coming down the stairs at this point. Oh, let's get to this point real quick in the video. Yeah, right here, when he's coming down the stairs. This is the part where I think this is where Xana may have came outside of her room to see what was going on. Probably went to go grab her food, and that's when she encounters him. And he has no choice. He feels in his mind he has no sick choice, guys. He should have never been in there in the first place. But this is where I think he encountered her. And then I think as he was so preoccupied, he knew he had been there too long. He probably tried to hurry up and get out of there before he woke anybody else, and happened to miss that Dylan was there. That's what I think. You guys let me know what you think. Now, a lot of people have been complaining a lot about, that Dylan didn't call the police. And I have said this over again a lot of times already, that I really think that it's because of the normality of that house, that it was a sorority house. There were a lot of people there. There were a lot of parties. A lot of police came there complaining about the noise. And this young lady had just moved into that house. So I think, and I suspect that she might have thought it was just either maybe Ethan's frat brother that came by, or a visitor, because they're so used to different visitors being there. And when she heard the crying, I think she probably thought that maybe Ethan and Zana had an argument. And when she heard the voice say, don't, it's okay, I'll help you, she probably thought, oh, Ethan's trying to console her. So she probably didn't want to be the bad guy and call the police, and everybody hate her in the house, because they're like, well, you call the police and we've already had multiple sightings and warnings about sightings, and you call for a non-issue. So I think in my mind, she probably thought, oh, the guy's creepy with the all black on. It had a weird vibe, which is her intuition kicking in. But she could have still thought, oh, that guy is pretty weird. I don't know. Maybe he's a weird frat brother of Ethan's, but still not think anything of it and just lock her door. Like I said, I'm in a sorority and I live in a sorority house. So I have had those experiences where weird, creepy people come and they have a lot of parties at the sorority house. And I would just close my door and lock it and not want to be bothered. Because I was just uncomfortable with all those people being in there. And of course I would feel a little nervous and uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean I'm going to go call the police because of that. And you can clearly see that a lot of these individuals were not screaming. They were quiet, okay? We didn't hear loud screaming. The only thing that the probable cause statement says is that they heard a whimper. So it makes a logical sense to me, guys, why she wouldn't have thought to call the police. And especially when she heard this individual, this male voice, consoling Zana. So that's what I'm thinking, guys. Let's take a look at this young lady here, because this lady here has had a similar experience, and I thought she was very captivating. She had the same experience that Dylan had. She woke up to a brutal slaughter of her roommates, okay? And I thought she would be a great person for you guys to listen to, that will explain to you possibly the mindset of what Dylan was going through. The only issue I think is still going to be the defense attorney trying to lay out some theory to try to accuse maybe the roommates because of that 8-hour gap. But other than that, I think us as a society needs to give this young lady a break and leave her alone, period.
My surviving roommate, Dylan, who said she heard noises and then opens her door and witnesses a masked man, bushy eyebrows, walking right toward her and then past her, thank God, and out. She goes back in, she locks her door, but does not call 911 for 8 hours. And when she does, it's a weird thing where there's a friend there and he calls, she faints. It's confused. It's always been a nagging oddity of this. Our next guest says, slow down. Her name is Alana Zabel. She says, I lived something eerily similar to this when she was back in school at the University of Buffalo. And she says there could be an explanation. Alana, thank you very much. I know that this is a haunting story in your own life and you're not anxious to have to relive it. But you do believe you have insight here. So to those who say, this doesn't make sense, she saw a masked man, locked the door, didn't do anything. What do you say?
I say, unless you've been in those shoes, you don't know what it's like to walk 1,000 miles. And not many people really get to experience something this horrific and this heightened state of fight or flight. And uniquely in both of our situations, we were young. I was 19 years old. My paradigm of life was fun, parties, people were coming and going through our house. We didn't have the inkling that somebody could be watching us or that someone would want to do something to harm us.
Exactly. This lady here was the similar age as Dylan, same environment, the same sorority party house. And she just explained to you what, in my opinion, I think Dylan's mindset was. Young, you're having a party, you're having a wonderful sorority party. Everybody's in and out, always partying. We've seen video footage of the authorities coming to that house multiple times. Even came during the daylight to talk to Kaylee and said, if you have any more loud noise here, we're going to fine you $300, and it's going to keep going up from there. That's what they said. So Dylan was used to that party loud life. She's used to people in and out. She's used to people awake all hours of the night. She would have never thought in a million years someone's going to go there to harm her. I mean, they're so comfortable in Idaho, they leave their doors unlocked. There hasn't been a killing in 7 years. So yes, she might have saw, hey, a guy in black walking out the door. But in my opinion, I think she just thought, oh, that's just some weird, creepy frat brother. Or she could have thought it was the Uber driver who came in with the food because, again, Sana ordered food. So let's continue on with her. But I think this woman is going to really give a perspective and shed light on what I personally think Dylan herself was feeling.
So when you live with 5 people and let's say the screen is out of place, you don't think the worst. You just think, oh, who moved the screen? You're trying to figure out, and if there's even an inkling, like seeing someone in a mask, could it be a fraternity prank? You don't want to call the police and think, oh, I just got my friends in trouble for having fun. Or when you're in that total frozen state of not knowing the reality, you really want to lean towards it not being something awful and horrific. Because
Right, exactly. And that's what I said in my very first analysis. I told you that she might have thought it was a prank because sororities and fraternities normally do a lot of pranks. I was used to that. I am in a sorority, and there's a lot of pranks that either the frat brothers will do on the sorority girls. Will come in with different things, and so she might have thought, oh, maybe it was one of Ethan's creepy frat brothers doing a prank. But her intuition did arouse her and did get her nervous, and she had this shock fear. So something told her to freeze, but I think she just thought, oh, he's creepy. Even if it's a prank, you could still be scared because the whole idea is, what if the fraternity brothers were coming there to pretend like they're robbers and just do a prank? So she was, yes, scared, but then she thought, oh, no, it's probably a prank, talked herself out of whatever fear she was feeling and just locked her door and said, whatever, I don't know what they have going on out there. I'm going to bed. That's what I think. And in hindsight 2020, she realized those were red flags after the fact. But let's keep hearing, because I feel like this lady is really shedding light on what I think Dylan is feeling.
because it's a rare experience to have something this horrific happen.
Now, in your case, the next morning, you realized a very different reality. The police came. It was a horrific scene. Luckily, the roommate in your case survived. Similarly here, the next morning, she thought maybe one of the kids is unconscious. She won't open the door. And then there's panic. She calls a friend to come over before she calls the police. Maybe she faints. That makes sense to you as well.
It does, and especially when I heard this story that she passed out when the reality of the situation really registered in her mind. Our minds are powerful mechanisms to survive, and she clearly didn't have the capacity to embrace the horror of what was happening, and she wanted to block it out. She wanted, maybe she's had prior traumas. These are trauma responses, and the fact that she passed out shows us it's like a computer. Our minds are like a computer. And if you put a program on a computer that doesn't have the capacity, your computer will crash. She passed out. She was not able to handle this. And I think we need to just show.
Right. To me, what explains why, when there was a 911 call, the dispatcher thought that they were saying that there was an unconscious person, because actually one of the surviving roommates passed out. So again, the dispatcher may not have really been understanding what was being told to her, because there's indications that the person who called, one of the roommates who called, was very, very emotional and screaming and crying and not really speaking clearly. And one of them had passed out, was literally unconscious from all of the trauma of seeing all of this unfold. So I really think that this lady here, who experienced the same exact traumatic experience like Dylan, same environment in a sorority household, to me sheds light and brings us some insight for why Dylan did not call 911 initially. I think that her explanation to me really clarifies that issue and should be able to effectively and to me clearly explain to everyone why she didn't call 911, because I had a lot of people in my chat asking that question. Now, there was another question that I personally had that this doctor here I think is amazing. My question that I had was, how come there was no screaming? I mean, there's people that describe when someone's getting stabbed, they're usually that blood curdling scream, and they're going to be, very emotional, and you're going to hear that. But in this case, there was not one scream. All the surveillance next to the house picked up was just a whimper and a thump. And then all Dylan heard was crying. But this doctor right here is going to explain to us why there was no screams. This guy here is truly amazing. Okay. Some of the questions that a lot of us have is the kind of wounds being described. Wouldn't they be screaming and fighting back? Wouldn't you hear that? Now, that was something, a lot of questions we had. I think this psychology social instructor here, he does an amazing explanation about what he thinks is going on. And I think he can shed some light on that, because I personally had that question myself. So let's hear what he has to say.
That keeps coming up. I did a video on that a couple weeks ago, but I've got a lot of new followers, so I'll do it again. And the affidavit actually gives us some more information here, because people keep saying, how could you hear screaming and not call 911? There had to be screaming. There actually is no evidence there was any screaming. The surviving roommate did not report hearing screams. A neighbor's security camera, which actually did pick up the sound of the dog barking and what sounded like whimpering and a thud, did not pick up any screams. There was no screaming. So how could that be? There's two factors that are probably both at work here. One is when you are actively under attack and defending yourself in that moment, the fight-flight response is putting all resources towards physically fighting off your attacker. It's shutting down anything that isn't necessary for that physical defense. That's where you get the concept of too scared to scream. Usually you've got to get some sort of distance from your attacker, some moment of opportunity before you're capable of screaming. And they didn't get that opportunity. The other one is the nature of the attack itself, the stab wounds, especially what the coroner reported, consistent among all four of them, was a primarily fatal wound, was a single deep wound to the chest, even though they did have multiple other wounds. As you can imagine, you take a deep wound to the chest and you're going to be physically incapable of screaming. And if that wound is to the heart, you've got 4 to 8 seconds max before you lose consciousness. We saw that demonstrated, unfortunately, in the NFL this week. Now, what about, I keep seeing people referring to her as being frozen in fear. Did she lay in her room frozen in fear for hours? She didn't say frozen in fear. She said she was in a frozen shock phase from being startled by opening her door, not expecting to see anyone, and seeing this person go walking by. And yeah, they were dressed in black and had a mask. I've seen people say ski mask. Nothing specifies in here the mask. Could have been a cloth mask, could have been an N95 COVID mask, which wouldn't be surprising. She had no reason at that moment to think this person going by, although they startled her and maybe looked suspicious, wasn't just one of her roommate's friends who was leaving. From Koberg's standpoint, Koberger's, it would make sense to wear an N95 mask because it would cover your face and it would prevent you from expelling droplets that could be detectable. I'm sure in this college town party house, they have had guests at their parties that sometimes showed up dressed in black. And then the last couple of years, probably wearing COVID masks. So just the dark dressed masked person isn't by themselves suspicious. She was getting no indicators of any murder happening in the house. She probably just went back to bed. Yeah, that's a question.
So I think that doctor there, that psychology expert, I think he really did, to me, shed light for me. Brian really carefully thought this out. I mean, he had wanted to be in the armed forces. He bought a particular knife that was used in the armed forces, guys. He studied this, and he probably looked at what and where he needs to stab to prevent any screaming or someone to fight back. So I think Brian initially, when he stabbed these people, he stabbed them each in vital areas, probably stabbed them each in the heart. And if you stab them there, there's no way for them to be able to scream or fight back if you stab in those vital areas. And clearly Kaylee and Maddie were caught off guard because they were laying in their bed. You know, maybe I think Kaylee was up though, because Dylan says she heard Kaylee's voice say someone's here. And I really, in my opinion, think it possibly was Kaylee, because her dog was barking. And usually dogs bark when someone unfamiliar is come into the house, or either in the house or knocking on the door. So that may have clued Kaylee in on that somebody that shouldn't be there was there. But I think Brian knew what he was doing, and he stabbed them in vital areas, which prevented them from screaming. That's why I think because Zana was awake when he attacked Zana, that's why Dylan heard Zana crying, because Zana was Zana was actually awake when Brian came to her room. So she saw him, whereas the other ones were caught off guard, laying down, whatever. Zana saw him, so she was able to fight him because she was awake. But she didn't scream because she's trying to push him off of her, and he was able to land that vital stab into the chest, which prevented any screaming. So now this is making sense to me. But again, all of these are just allegations, because we will have to wait and see what the evidence provides on that day when it is heard in trial. Now, after these killings, there have been some very haunting things that have happened. Number one, we heard from the probable cause affidavit, y'all, that Brian creepy self may have possibly been, he went over there, he drove near the house at around 9 o'clock. Just a lot of weird things that he had done, right? So what I think is that even during the time when the news reporters were out there, he was still coming over here. Look at this hunting clip from someone's news footage from Fox News. So Fox News, guys, they're doing reporting. And as they're reporting, a white car is seen driving in the background. Do you see that car? You guys think that's Brian's car? Because that white car has now, a lot of people are taking notice too, that white car driving by as the news reporters are covering this case. My goodness, guys, is that disturbing or what? Now, we don't know if that was Brian's car, but it sure darn looks like it. It sure looks like it, guys. What do you think? That is so creepy. A lot of news coverages are starting to take notice to that, because no one really paid attention to it, because no one knew at the time that they were looking for a white car. So do you guys suspect that that was Brian driving around? Who knows? Let's take a look. Crime Circus actually got the footage of it from the news report. So I wanted you guys to do that. But before we do that, let's look at this article here. It says, haunting video alleges Idaho murder suspect returned to the scene. Now, new footage of the white car picture driving through the area near the home the day after may correspond with that theory. A Fox News digital camera recorded a brief sighting of a car heading up a road next to the Moscow house. The vehicle can be seen at the top of the video frame as two law enforcement officers converse near side of a field at around 2 p.m. on November 14th. So as the news is covering it, this car is seen creeping in the woods by, looking over near the house. Just creepy, right? Driving near the house, trying to find out what's going on at the crime scene. Do you guys think this is Brian? Do you? Now I've seen this video coverage floating around, but Brian but Crime Circus had this great coverage in his video, so I'm gonna play it straight from his video. If you can see it right there, there it is. Let's see. Do you think this is the car? Driving by. Look at that car, guys. That looks like a white Elantra. What did you think? Let's do that again. Oops. My goodness, what just happened? Sorry, guys, about that. See that car right there in the back, right there, right there. There it is, driving. That looks like a white Elantra, guys, to me. What? That looks like a white Elantra. Oh my gosh, guys. Do you think that was Brian Koberger's car? That's creepy. It's like he was over there lurking, guys, checking out the damage he had done. He literally was obsessed with this case and trying to study every nook and cranny to see if the cops were onto him. In fact, there is a neighbor who has come out and is talking about this. A neighbor has said that Brian was talking to him about the case. Isn't that creepy? Let's hear from this neighbor who didn't want to be, he didn't want his name out there, but I thought this was interesting that Brian was over there talking to the neighbor, telling him, hey, they don't have a suspect. It sounds like Brian was really stressed and really, really studying this case, which to me creates evidence that he probably was in those social media platforms such as Reddit. I think he possibly was the inside looking profile and the Papa Roger profile, because you can see how obsessed he is with this case. Let's hear from the neighbor.
Tonight, we have new details in the murder case of those 4 University of Idaho students. This is the spring semester got underway today ahead of suspect Brian Koberger's expected court appearance tomorrow. For the first time, we are hearing from one of Koberger's neighbors. CBS's Lilia Luciano reports from Moscow.
Tonight, in an exclusive interview, a neighbor in the Pullman, Washington apartment building of suspect Brian Koberger says Koberger spoke to him about the murders. The neighbor asked not to be identified.
He brought it up in conversation, asked if I had heard about the murders, and which I did. And then he said, yeah, it seems like they have no leads. Seems like it was a crime of passion. At the time of our conversation, it was only like, a few days after it had happened, so there wasn't much details out.
Also tonight, the search warrant for Koberger's Washington apartment has been sealed temporarily. A judge saying the details could, quote, prematurely end the investigation and create a threat to public safety. Meanwhile, just 6 miles away at the University of Idaho, students are returning to class today for the first time since Koberger's arrest. Many, like freshman Madeline Pollock, expressing relief.
I was kind of glad to see a lot of cops around, just in case something did happen, they'll be there. But it feels very relieving and like knowing he's behind bars.
Koberger is charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder in the death.
Expected court appearance tomorrow. For the first time, we are hearing from one of Koberger's neighbors. CBS's Lilia Luciano reports from Moscow.
Tonight, in an exclusive interview, a neighbor in the Pullman, Washington apartment building of suspect Brian Koberger says Koberger spoke to him about the murders. The neighbor asked not to be identified.
He brought it up in conversation, asked if I had heard about the murders, and which I did. And then he said, yeah, it seems like they have no leads. It seems like it was a crime of passion. At the time of
Wow, seems like they have no leads. Seems like it was a crime of passion. He literally, guys, can you believe it? He's over here asking different people about the crime he did, like he wants to get attention for it. Have you heard about that Idaho 4 killing? Like he's proud of his work. Then he says, seems like it was a crime of passion. There he is cluing us in on the fact that he had an obsessive passion for one of the Idaho 4 or multiple of the Idaho 4. I still think it was Kaylee. He had an insane crime of passion or a passionate obsession with Kaylee. And because he couldn't have her and he was so irate and angry over all the different rejections he's had of women that are his type, that are similar to her, he was enraged and he literally told the neighbor that. It sounds like a crime of passion. He literally is telling this guy what it was and what he was feeling, that he was in a fit of rage when he unalived these people. And I think that's why Kaylee had most of the injuries, because his crime of passion or his passionate obsession turned into an obsessive hate for her and women that represent her, because those are the women he's always longed for. And he has continually been rejected all of his life because he is the incel that we have talked about. But don't you find that disturbing? Another disturbing thing about this video is that the judge is remaining and continuing to seal the search warrants. That was another thing we heard from this video, that the search warrants of the apartment of the Pennsylvania house is sealed to protect to preserve the investigation and protect public safety. To me, that tells me, guys, that they found some very disturbing evidence in that apartment. They have a lot more evidence on this guy. And once we find out, guys, it's going to be very disturbing. And if they said it threatened public safety, my gosh, what did this guy have? Bombs in his house or something? Did he have bombs he was going to explode or blow up the apartment complex? Guys, there is some disturbing things that they found. They found a lot more evidence. This, oh my gosh, I cannot wait for this trial, because I really want to know what's in that arrest warrant, guys, because the judge is sealing it to protect the public. And they said it would prevent further investigation into the crime, which it would, because it would violate even some of Brian's rights to a fair trial, because of how whatever incriminating evidence is found in that house or that apartment or the office. And so they can't disclose that information to protect the case. And just because I know a lot of the students are saying they're relieved because there hasn't been an arrest, just because there's been an arrest doesn't mean he has been found guilty. So he can easily be released at any time. So a lot of people have to understand an arrest is just an arrest. It's not a guilty verdict. So there's a long ways to go in this case for justice to be served. But I thought that was quite interesting, guys, that he's over here talking to his neighbors about the case and telling him that it was a crime of passion. And he sounded really excited that there were no leads, which to me sounds like he has been interjecting himself in this crime, which to me also goes to show his obsession with interjecting himself into these different online profiles, such as the Facebook profile, the University of Idaho case discussion, where a lot of us theorize and think that Papa Roger is Brian. Now, remember, I've talked to you guys on a prior video about Elliot Rodger. I played his video for you about Elliot Rodger. And remember, I told you that Elliot Rodger was an incel also, and he went out and he brutally slaughtered his or different women out there who were in sororities, because he had a big hatred for sorority women and he felt he was being rejected. He also hated men who could be able to attract these type of women. And I showed you the video of him several days ago of him talking about how he was going to inflict his retribution and alive these women. He even went to a sorority house to carry it out. But Elliot Rodger is known as kind of like a role model in the incel community. And so I find it quite striking, guys, that Mr. Brian, or this profile goes by Papa Roger. Why did he use the last name Roger? That is quite telling. And he spells it the exact way that Elliot Rodger spells it, which is cluing us in that he is an incel. And Brian knows that he's an incel. He knows that he's a loner. He's talks about this repeatedly on the Tappa Talk blog. about being a loner and how he wanders around as a solo person, you know, all by himself and doesn't have friends and he can't sleep at night. This was not just something new that happened to Brian. This is something he's dealt with since he was a teenager, allegedly. So let's look at some more information. We talked about this Papa Roger profile before. And one of the very eerie things about the Papa Roger profile was these very disturbing comments about the sheaf. This was November 30th, guys, over a month before any of us in the public knew about a sheaf. So Papa Roger was the only person on these online profiles that identified the sheaf. And that was very telling, that only the killer or law enforcement knew about the sheaf being left there. So it had to clue us in that I suspect Papa Roger is Brian. But Crime Circus did a wonderful job of giving us more details about this profile. I already talked about this particular post here on my prior video. You'll have to watch it. But Crime Circus went into the additional comments that Papa Murphy made about the sheaf. Papa Roger made about the sheaf, because it seemed as though Papa Roger was obsessed with the sheaf being left, which to me brings and sheds light on the mindset of Brian, that Brian had been beating himself up. He'd been obsessing. He was stressed up all night about leaving that sheaf because he knew he had messed up, guys, by leaving that sheaf, leaving DNA. And that's what really stressed him out. And you could tell that it was really something that was stressing him out so much, because he kept talking about it even in this group, and nobody else knew about the sheaf being left. Look at this. He says, of the evidence released, the murder weapon has been consistent as a large fixed blade knife. This leads me to believe they found the sheaf. See, how would he know that? No one knew about the sheaf. He gave himself away, and he's literally admitting that he is an incel while calling himself Papa Roger. Then there was this other one. Some other person in that group said, fixed blade means that it's not a folding knife. The way I'm guessing they could tell was by impressions or bruising around the stab wounds that showed the outline of the guard on the knife. And then Papa Roger says, you wouldn't be able to tell that at the crime scene. So it sounds like somebody who's an expert, sounds like someone who is Brian. Then the person says, they don't clean bodies at a crime scene. The amount of blood must have been tremendous. See, he's describing the detail of that house that nobody else would know but the killer. Again, then this person says, due to the number of victims and assuming each victim was stabbed multiple times, I'm sure that there was visible evidence of a guard. For all we know, the investigators on the scene wiped a couple of stab wounds clean to look for bruising. I think it's far more logical than finding a sheath. Sheaths are usually attached to a belt. See, and so people who didn't know about this murder, or who wasn't there, of course, i.e. us normal people who are outsiders, would never have thought about a sheath. But Brian is pushing this sheath theory, in my opinion. I keep saying Brian, but I really think Papa Rogers is Brian. He is so fixated on the sheath being left, guys. This guy was so obsessed. Notice how there's evidence that the neighbor's saying that he's asking him about the killings. Now there's some weird, suspicious person online. Nobody else has brought up a sheath, but this profile named Papa Roger, with a profile picture that looks eerily similarly to Brian, a side profile, and he's so obsessed with the sheath. This person who is just in the group is denying that it's possibly not the sheath, because again, he's not the killer. But look at Papa Murphy. Papa Murphy says, but the police were very specific about the type of knife used. But nobody would have known that about Brian, because he had the knife, guys. That's what I'm saying. How does he know about the sheath being left? Scott Jute reportedly told them his shop doesn't sell the specific. And see, Brian would have known that. See, Brian thought this whole thing out. Brian knew that that store would not have had a receipt of him purchasing the knife there, because I believe Brian purchased that knife from a marketplace or a private seller. So he has all this outside knowledge, or inside knowledge that no one else would know. And he's literally telling everybody what his motive was by even this profile name, Papa Roger, Elliot Roger. He's aligning himself with a very well-known, brutally murderous incel, Elliot Roger. So he's basically letting people know what his motive was. Wow, and the crime of passion that he had, because he told the neighbor that. He said they are looking for a very specific knife. And then Papa Roger says, curious why you debating the sheath theory so hard. And again, he's projecting here. Brian is projecting here. Brian is trying to accuse the other user of debating the sheath theory so hard, but really it's Brian who is debating the sheath theory so hard, not the other person. The other person is just saying, giving his opinion, but Brian is so fixated on trying to push the sheath theory because he is absolutely stressed out of his mind. That's why he went back to the crime scene. That's why we saw that clip from Fox News of possibly his car circling the area of the crime scene, guys. This picture is crazy, guys. I couldn't believe it when I saw this hunting video alleges to see this car, possibly of Brian, circling the area. That's why he was doing it, though, because he was so stressed out of his mind. That's why he lost focus in class. He wasn't grading the papers well. He was not really there. He was aloof because he was stressed. He knew that he screwed up when he left that sheath, and he was stressing if the authorities had found that sheath. That's why you can notice this profile, who is possibly Brian, pushing this whole theory about the sheath. But notice, nobody knew about that sheath until recently when we got the probable cause affidavit. So how does he know? There's only one explanation. And that is because this is Brian with this fake profile. And let's see if there's any more. Okay, here it is. So then Dustin says, sheaths are meant for belts. Again, that is true. So Brian would have had the sheath clipped to his belt, but because of the force of the violence he exerted on those poor young ladies, guys, the force was so brutal. And the way he violently destroyed, mutilated Kaylee, because of all the anger and the crime of passion and the rage. I don't think it was more so crime of passion. I think it was an internal rage, a passionate rage in this man, that he was reflecting on all the years of rejection after rejection after rejection of all the women that did not like this socially awkward, antisocial Brian, that he exerted it all on her, the victim he chose. And as he was exerting this very forceful, violent act, his sheath fell off of his belt, because sheaths are meant for belts. See where Dustin said? And he didn't think to look and see. He ran out of that room so fast that the sheath fell as he was stabbing these victims. Didn't even notice it and left because he was so in a rush. And then violently unalived the other two victims and left out of that house and was stressed out, guys, until he was arrested about that sheath. That's what I think. So let's see some other. And then Papa Roger, who I think is Brian, says, Dustin, who would carry a large exposed knife? See, he's still pushing the sheath, guys. He is still pushing the sheath because he knows he left that sheath there, and that's what's been stressing him out, because he knows that was going to be the one thing that was going to seal his fate. But wait till they find that stuff in the house, because that's why they're sealing that arrest warrant. There's some real disturbing stuff in that arrest warrant. My God, I can't wait to hear what's in it, but I know it's sealed. We're not going to know until the trial, but hey. Dustin says, Papa Roger says, Dustin, how did the killer hold the knife before or prior to entering the scene, in your opinion? See, he's trying to talk down to this person in the group because he is the only one who knows what really happened and how he held that knife when he came in. He's the only one that knows that. So he's trying to make this person in the group look dumb. And he's also talking a lot like he also talked about like Inside Looking, because Inside Looking always will say, in your opinion. So Papa Roger says, do you carry a knife? And then Dustin says, Papa Roger, dude, give it a rest. You sound like a psycho. He does, right? He does sound like a psycho. It seems like he was having a lot of problems even in the other Reddit group. Oh, goodness. Sorry, guys, for the commercial. I hate the commercials on YouTube. Okay. And then he says, dude, give it a rest. You sound like a psycho. Papa Roger, who is, I think is Brian, says, remember, I made the original post and you have gone down this path. So again, you could see the antisocial characteristics of Papa Roger seeping through this profile, which is consistent with the same type of behavior that a lot of people said about Brian, talking down to people, trying to be contentious and argument and weird and creepy, and the fact that he knew stuff about that sheaf that no one else knew about. Then Dustin says, Papa Roger, so since I commented on your post with my opinion on a discussion board, I should be accepting of your weird and creepy ass questions. And then Papa, see, weird and creepy. Again, why does everybody associate Brian with weird and creepy? He's even on a fake profile, allegedly, if this is Brian, and people who don't even know him are still referring to him as weird and creepy. People who actually know Brian, they say he's weird and creepy. His Tinder date, she said he's weird and creepy. I mean, that is another indicator that this is possibly Brian, because even people who don't even know him to be Brian are referring to him as weird and creepy. Then Dustin says, Papa Roger, asking me questions like, which hand did he hold the knife in? And do you carry a knife with no context is just strange. You were asking me questions that only, look at this, guys, only the killer would know answers to. You see that? And then Dustin says, are you suggesting that I'm the killer? Laughing out loud, right? Then then he says, Dustin says, sorry, I trashed your stupid sheath theory and you couldn't take it. And that sounds like Brian, guys. Brian can't take when someone disagrees with him. He has to always be right, in my opinion, based upon what other people have said and how he's talked down to women. And especially there was an allegation that he talked down to a woman in the classroom and she stormed off so emotionally wounded that she left her items there. Then Dustin says, any other brain buster theories? Maybe they found a receipt laying in the kitchen for the knife. See, I really think this is Brian, guys, because Brian is obsessed. And even Dustin's like showing how dumb he is. Brian's like, oh, so you think they found the receipt too? Like, just like, come on, your theories are just out of control. Then Papa Roger says, why are you angry? See, this right here, this question right here is similar to someone who is gaslighting a person. They know what they did to make you angry, and then they turn around and try to act like the innocent person and make it look like you're just irrational and crazy and you don't have a logical reason for being angry. We saw that whole thread, and anybody in that situation would have got frustrated with Papa Roger. But now Papa Roger is going on the defense and now trying to act like he's Mr. Innocent and gaslighting this guy, Dustin. And we've seen this same pattern from different people who have encountered Brian, who say that he likes to gaslight people. For example, the Tinder date. When he was in her dorm room, she alleged that he was touching her repeatedly, and she tried to tell him to stop touching her. And when she confronted him about not touching her, he gaslit her and was like, I didn't touch you. And he kept denying it when clearly she knew he had touched her. Like, he was like, again. And then at the bar in Pennsylvania, when he had made creepy comments to women and called one woman the B word, and it was so bad they had to notate that. When the owner confronted him about it, Brian was acting as though the owner was crazy. He was like, you must have the wrong person. What are you talking about? You know, And same thing. Now look at this person who is Papa Roger, who people suspect to be Brian. He's doing the same thing. He's gaslighting this guy, Dustin, by saying, why are you angry? He knows exactly why Dustin's angry, because Papa Roger is asking these really sick, irrational questions that only the killer would know, because possibly Brian is the killer, allegedly. And this is allegedly his profile, his fake profile, Papa Roger, using that, associating with another fellow incel, Elliot Roger. And now he's trying to act like he's the victim. Why are you angry? And when he knows why he's angry. And then Dustin says, Papa Roger, why did you communicate like a serial killer? Exactly, saying, why do you communicate like a serial killer? See, these posts are so disturbing, guys. If this is not Brian, then there's another sick person out there that is exactly like Brian. And look how he says, I feel like the white car isn't relevant. Now, remember, Brian likes to gaslight people. So he knows that the white car is very relevant. So he wants to throw off the investigation. He knows good and well it's relevant. So just very disturbing things. Then he says, not a new post for me, but still very relevant. How long was the killer in the house? So again, a question, why would he's just trying to, you see how Brian likes to ask a lot of dumb, weird questions, inquisitive questions like that? He did that on the post Reddit he did for the survey, asking people how long, he was asking criminals, how long did you stay in the house? Oh, why did you choose that victim? What made you choose that victim? So it sounds consistent. And then also, this is from Papa Roger says, Papa Roger here posted this December 2nd on here saying, this is on the high side of the house. They found evidence here. It's likely blood dripping from the killer. How does he know that, guys? How does he know that? Nobody else knows this stuff. To me, it sounds like Brian. I'm so convinced. I don't know what to tell you guys. Again, this is all allegedly, but I'm so convinced this is Brian. Even the name and how the profile picture looks. He's another BTK. They can't seem to stay away from the crime scene. They have to get recognition. And that's what's going to get Brian caught up. Because they're going to find a lot of disturbing things on Brian's electronics. It might even find these profiles. Then he says either they fled through this area or they were parked there. Again, this is December 2nd. How does he know this? They were parked there? Brian must have knew he was dripping with blood on his clothes when he got out of that house. He knew he was parked there. He's literally telling people blood dripping from the killers. Either they fled through this area or they were parked there. How does he know all this, guys? This being the most strategic entrance point to the house. It shows planning. See, he's literally acknowledging that he planned this whole thing out, that it shows strategic entrance to the house. There's also indications that Brian's phone cell towers were pinging from the very internet Wi-Fi of the house. So he had to have been close enough to that house. There's information that has come out and leaked that the Idaho Forest house, their Wi-Fi was pinging, Brian's phone was pinging off their Wi-Fi. So he had to have been close during those times he was stalking them, the different 12 times he was there. He must have been behind their house, watching behind their house to see what would, like, the strategic entrance that he can go in, entrance point he can go into that house. Maybe he even creeped into their house while they were sleeping at times and was hiding in the closet while they were sleeping. So it didn't actually carry out the crime on those nights. But he carefully planned this. And look at Papa Roger is literally saying it. It shows planning. The most strategic entrance in the house. So to the house, entrance point to the house. He's literally telling everybody, this is so eerie, guys. As I read this, I get the chills because I feel this profile is Brian. How does he know all this stuff? How does he know? You tell me, guys. So, that was some telltale information more about that Papa Roger. We talked about him before, but there are some very disturbing things about Mr. Papa Roger. There is more disturbing things. My gosh, this guy is sick and decrepit, y'all. I don't know what to tell you. But let's talk about, where did Brian go after the killings? Now, Court TV did a wonderful, oh my God, they did such a great job. I encourage you guys to watch their whole video on it, but they actually drove to all the areas. So let's watch some of their video about where Brian drove. There was one area where Brian drove where he could actually see over the tower, and he could see the police officers. He could see the police department. He could see how many police cars were at the police station, how many had left. And there is his phone pinged that night over there, so that he could literally be overlooking that area to see if the authorities were out working that night before he committed these killings. Isn't that sick? Let's hear from Court TV. I think they did a really good job taking us to the various areas.
Just hours after police say 4 college students were brutally stabbed inside this home in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, the alleged killer returned to the scene. Brian Kohberger's cell phone allegedly shows him here at 9:12 a.m. and staying for about 10 minutes. But that isn't the only location police placed Kohberger that day in the hours after the murders. According to the probable cause affidavit, Brian Kohberger's cell phone records show him moving south from Pullman, Washington, where he lived in an on-campus apartment at Washington State University, towards Lewiston, Idaho, about a 50-minute drive. The town of Lewiston is located on the border of Washington State, where just across the Snake River is the bordering town of Clarkston, Washington. It was here at approximately 12:36 p.m. November 13th, 2022, when cell phone records placed Kohberger's vehicle here on Port Drive next to Kate's Cup of Joe coffee stand. The surveillance videos here at the U.S. Chef's store show his white Hyundai Elantra drive past. Then, just 10 minutes later, at 12:46 p.m., Kohberger's cell phone records place him at the nearby Albertsons grocery store. Surveillance video at 12:49 p.m. shows Kohberger walking through the store and purchasing unknown items at the checkout. He leaves at approximately 1:04 p.m. The probable cause affidavit does not indicate location data for the next few hours of the day. It isn't until around 5:30 p.m. that the affidavit indicates Kohberger's cell phone located in Johnson, Idaho. But there is no Johnson, Idaho. The affidavit may have meant this community of Johnson, Washington, right on the border of Idaho State. It's a location consistent with the affidavit's route, and it's surrounded by cell phone towers.
So that was one of the first mistakes that was noted in the affidavit. There was 2 notable mistakes that the officer made in the affidavit. The first one is they said it was Idaho, Johnstontown. Well, that was not correct. Brian's phone did not ping in Idaho, Johnstontown. It's pinging in some area in Washington called like a Johnston little area here where she's noting right here. Also, there's another error in the police affidavit where, well, there's a problem. There's a problem where the defense is going to attack. Okay. The defense is going to attack the credibility and the accuracy or lack thereof of the phone cell towers, because there's one ping where Brian's phone is alleged to have pinged in Idaho, when in reality, the officer acknowledges that Brian was not in fact in Idaho. So the defense are going to argue that those cell phone towers are not accurate and that basically the jury should not even consider it to be valid evidence. So that may be some areas where the defense can poke holes. Will it be a strong argument? Who knows? Because I think where the prosecution will be able to rise above that argument is because of the surveillance that also shows a white Hyundai Elantra passing by that gas station near the and turning into the residential area. and also that same white Hyundai Elantra pulling into the Washington State University parking lot. So he's going to have that will be able to address that issue. But I still think the accuracy of the cell phone tower pings are going to be something that the defense are going to be arguing given the two mistakes. But I just love this court TV video because they're showing us what these areas look like. So let's keep listening to this, and we're going to listen to another one of them.
For 3 minutes from 5:32 to 5:36 p.m. November 13, 2022, Kohberger's cell phone pings here near the community of Johnson. But then his cell phone goes dark for 3 hours. The affidavit,
which we have to ask, what was he doing for those 3 hours? And there is a Snake River over there. I feel, and he didn't even go to that coffee shop over there. We mistakenly thought in the affidavit that Brian had gone to the coffee shop. He never went there. His phone, the cell phone towers pinged off there, and the video surveillance captured him driving past it, but he didn't go there. He drove in the middle of nowhere, guys, and he was there, and his cell phone went off for 3 hours. This man, in my opinion, he turned that phone off so that the authorities could not detect where he was because he knew they were going to look for that. And during that time, guys, he was over there, y'all, stashing all of the evidence, his clothes, his shoes, the knife, all of that. He probably even dropped it in the Snake River. But very disturbing. I really feel he spent that day after the killings trying to find where to stash all of these evidence.
David notes that this location in Johnson is consistent with the phone being in the same area that it traveled in the hours immediately following the murders. And according to the affidavit, from 5:36 p.m. when it was in Johnson until 8:30 p.m. November 13th, Kohberger's phone stopped reporting to the network, meaning he turned it off, put it in airplane mode, or the phone was in an area without cell coverage.
Right. One of the two options. Either he turned it off or it was not in a good cell phone coverage. I think he turned it off because he knew he was going to be hiding or discarding some key evidence in that area. And he didn't want the cell phone towers to ping off where he was so that it could clue the authorities in on where he was. So this is very disturbing after you look at this area. This area is the middle of nowhere. There's nothing there. It's like complete bare land. You would think if he's stashing evidence, he would be going to like a wooded area, like foresty type area. No, he's in the middle of nowhere. Where is he going to hide this stuff? Is he burying all these items into some little ditch somewhere? Or did he stash it in the Snake River?
While the probable cause affidavit does provide new revelations into the movements of the alleged killer in the hours after the murders, there are still many questions that remain. Why did he drive so far to the grocery store? What did he buy there? Did he get rid of that murder weapon and other incriminating evidence along the way, or during that 3-hour period his phone went dark? For now, we wait, and answers may only come during his trial. Reporting in Moscow, Idaho, Chanley Payne.
That is disturbing. Oh my gosh. Court TV did a great job of showing us where possibly they could have gone. But I wanted y'all to hear this other disturbing thing here, guys, because they went, when they were driving over the areas where Brian drove, there was a location where he could overlook and see the police department. You see this map here where the red is? That's where he was driving. And the police department is right here. So he could literally drive over here and oversee in this area where the police department is to see, how many cars are there, what's going on. It is quite interesting. So I wanted you guys to hear her talk about that because that was very interesting. What if before he committed these killings, he drove, because that's where he drove at that location. Was he looking in that area to see how many police cars were there, who were dispatched, what was going on? Because again, that helps him to not be find himself encountering the authorities if he knows where they are, how many are dispatched, and so forth. And this is a small rural area, so it's easy for him to be able to determine what's going on with the police department just by looking and seeing how many police vehicles are still in the parking lot at the police station. So let's hear what they have to say about that.
It's a direct line of sight from this Indian Hills Drive, this neighborhood. It looks directly over the police station. And again, he said to be here at, I believe it was 2:50. I have to look at the exact time. I have it right here. But he said to be there in the moments leading up to the murders. There's the video. Okay, I see it now. There's the video. So
that's amazing, Chanley. That's amazing. I mean, as clear as day, you can see the police station. And, you know, there's not a ton of officers in Moscow, but you can see who's on duty, things quiet, what's going on, who's where. Are they out patrolling?
Yes.
Where are they? And boom, then he's kind of hanging out in a strange place.
Yes, it's a way to scope out maybe the police department without getting caught on their cameras, Vinny. It's an overlook. How many times was he here before?
Unbelievable.
Wow. So around 2:50 something a.m. in the morning, guys, he's seen over there in that area, overlooking where the police station is, so that he could possibly, allegedly, see.
I didn't think I had time for college, but with
sorry guys, to see how many officers are probably on duty or not. This man seriously thought about this, guys. This is a man who studied this and was trying to find every way that he could get away with murder, guys. This was very carefully planned. All the way to the point where he drove in a specific location, guys, so that he could see and where the police station is. If you see this red lining here, this is the direction he drove strategically so that he can overlook here where the police department is to see how many police officers are on duty. So he could be aware of whether this was going to be a successful hit, meaning a successful murder, without having to be interrupted by authorities. That is some sneaky stuff, guys. That is very sneaky. This guy clearly, carefully thought this sick stuff out. And y'all, this is not the end of it. This is not the end of it. You will never believe it right now, what's going on with this guy. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to some more disturbing information, y'all. So when Brian was being flown to Idaho, there were some guards that were on there listening to some of the things that he was saying, and he was saying some really disturbing things while he was in the plane after he had been detained and arrested, and he was now being flown back from Pennsylvania back to Idaho. And so some of the prison guards that were in the car, they said, or not in the car, sorry, what am I saying? That were in the plane with him, sorry guys, that were in the plane with him, they said that they heard him say some very interesting things. So let's hear what he said. There is actually a news article that discussed it. So in this article, it says, Brian Koberger told cops, "It's really sad what happened to slain Idaho students." Report. That's what Brian said. It's really sad what happened to slain Idaho students. Wow. The nerve of this guy, guys. The nerve of him. He's irritating me. The man accused of brutally stabbing 4 University of Idaho students to death reportedly told cops it was really sad what happened to the victims. Wow. So he's trying to act as though he didn't do it. Does he really feel that way, or is he trying to play a role? Interesting, right? If we find out that he actually committed these crimes, it's going to be quite disturbing, that comment he says, if he's the one that did it. Okay. Brian Kohlberger, 28, made the comment to officers as he was being extradited from Pennsylvania to Idaho last week, according to a police source who spoke to People. The source who was involved in the extradition process told the outlet that the murder suspect didn't speak directly about the students' murders, but did comment on their tragic fates. That's quite interesting. They said he did say it was really sad what happened to them, but didn't say anything more. The source said he's smarter than that. See, this guy, I'm telling you, Brian knows what he's doing. You guys don't understand this sick guy. He knows what he's doing. He studied this inside and out. He's not going to say anything that's going to incriminate him. So he's going to try to make it look like, oh, you know, it's so sad. The source told the outlet that the PhD criminology student seemed really nervous. He was narrating to himself that everything that was happening. Sorry, they said he was narrating to himself everything that was happening. So he was over there talking to himself. That's what they said. At one point, he was saying something to himself like, I'm fine. This is okay. Like he was reassuring himself that this whole thing wasn't awful. That is so weird, guys. He's over there talking to himself, telling himself that he is fine and everything's okay. What a weirdo. I'm just saying. Brian reportedly said what happened to the 4 students he's accused of killing was sad. The nerve of him. The nerve of him. Oh my God, he's so disgusting. If it's found that he did it, that's a very disturbing comment if he did it. DNA evidence found on the sheath of a knife left at the murder scene has linked him to the killings, as well as phone records and his car. Arrest is not the same as conviction. We already know that. Kohlberger was arrested on December 30th and charged with the individuals. Officials have not found any connections between Kohlberger and the alleged victims or the motive. However, phone data revealed that he had been in the area of the students' home in Moscow, Idaho, at least a dozen times before they were slaughtered in their beds. His phone pinged in the area at odd hours. All but one of the times pinged in the late evening and early morning hours. That's disgusting. And we know he doesn't sleep. He has a lot of insomnia dating back to his teenage years. And he's only 10 miles away from them. We already know that. A source at the jail told People that he is adapting to his new living arrangement. Ew, he's adapting. They said he keeps to himself. He's away from the other prisoners, the source said, but he will make small talk with the guards and seems to be getting used to the place. Is that weird or what? Seems to be getting used to the place? So he's enjoying his new home? I'm done. He knows he belongs there. That's why he knows he belongs there. I can't, guys. I can't with this guy. How do you say? Why are all these Brians messing up? We got this Brian Laundrie guy here. We got Brian Kohlberger. We got Brian Walsh. Brian Walsh is said to have been somewhat involved in his wife's missing person challenge or tragedy. There's a lot of Brian's messing up these days, y'all. Lots of Brian's. So y'all let me know what y'all think about that disturbing comment that Brian was making. Y'all make it make sense. I just read an article. Let me see if I can find it again. But they said Brian Kohlberger. I just saw it. I hate when I just see stuff. Helped write statement. Brian allegedly is helping his attorney write statements, guys. He wrote the statement that he helped draft up the statements for his defense. I told you he was going to help in this thing and be all happy and extra proud about what he's doing. And he just loves that he is going to be assisting in this criminal defense of this crime. Just very sick, disturbing things, right? So this is a new article that has come out and said that Brian helped draft public statement. Wow, that is so weird. He said Jason Labar, the attorney for Idaho killing suspect Brian Kohlberger, told News Nation's Brian Eaton that there are holes in the probable cause affidavit that led to his client's arrest. Kohlberger is scheduled to be in court Thursday for status hearing that is expected to be scheduled, and that he helped draft the public statement. Y'all, let's hear what they had to say, y'all, because it looks like they're going to talk about it here. Hold on, let me mute my mic because I don't want my mic messing up on us.
Spoken with that public defender who represented Kohberger immediately after his arrest. What have you learned?
Yeah, this was interesting, Ashley, because last time we saw the public defender in Pennsylvania, Jason Labar, he was with Kohberger in court. I was in the courtroom, but he had not seen the 18-page probable cause. So now he has. I asked him what he thought about it, and he says he thinks there are holes in the probable cause. He is questioning the phone pings. He says that those pings are not specific GPS coordinates, and he says the
Exactly. What did I just say to you guys just a couple minutes ago? That I said the defense were going to attack the credibility of those cell phone pings, and look what the defense attorney's doing already. Now, this is not going to be his court-appointed attorney. It was the attorney in Pennsylvania. But that is one of the predicting theories that the defense attorney is going to hang their hats on for the defense, is they're going to attack the credibility of those cell phone pings. So I just predicted it, y'all.
Defense can have a field day with those pings, calling them out. He is also questioning the description of Kohberger from the surviving roommate, that description that she says was, the man who is about 6 feet tall and the bushy eyebrows. He says it's just not specific enough. And then I asked him about the statement. Remember that statement that he initially put out right after Kohberger was arrested? Very interesting. Kohberger had a lot to do with that statement. Listen to what he told me. The statement that you released from Kohberger, where he, said that he was innocent, essentially, did you write the statement with him? I don't know if you can share how that statement came about.
The statement came about Friday night when I talked to him, and then I went out to the jail at 5 o'clock. I know there was a lot of people, a lot of news media outlet at the jail at that time, but I knew it was dark out, so I could essentially sneak in under the cover of dark and be able to talk to him without anyone knowing that I was actually there. And I spoke to him for about an hour. I let him know about the statement, that I wanted to get a statement out there because with all of the news media, I knew there was going to obviously be issues as far as him receiving potentially a fair trial, people jumping to conclusions. Automatically you worry about the presumption of innocence and the integrity of the criminal justice system. So I said, Brian, is it okay if we get a statement out? And that's when he brought up the eager to be exonerated language. And obviously that was included in the statement.
So that was him. That was him who wanted to put that in.
The eager to be exonerated was the language he used. We put it in the statement. But obviously when I talked to him about the eager to be exonerated, to me, when we talked about it, it was more or less he was asserting innocence, but that's the language he used.
So very interesting, Ashley, that he...
Wow, guys. Very interesting that Brian helped assist his attorney in drafting up the statement. You can already see where the defense is going to possibly be going in their defense. They're going to be attacking the credibility of the witness, the roommates, their identification of Brian. And they're going to be attacking those cell phone pings, and there's going to be a lot more things they're going to be attacking. So I hope that the prosecution is ironcladding and building that case up as strong as they can, because Brian is going to love and enjoy defending this case, because that's one of the reasons he did it, so he could see if he can get away with murder. He knew he messed up by leaving that sheaf, but he's still, being as narcissistic as he is going to do what he can to try to get away with this murder. All right, guys. You guys let me know what you think about all this disturbing new revelations we got. What do you think about any of it? And what is your opinion? Thank you. Take care. Have a good night.